Hello and welcome to this edition of Talking Adoption. And today we are looking at the Adopter Hub. I'm Grace Gomez and I am the Adopter Diversity Recruitment Officer for PACT Charity. And I'm joined today by Tanya. Welcome, Tanya.
Hello.
Tell us a little bit more about your job role within PACT, please.
Hello, well, I'm Tanya St-Toby-Broon. I'm the Adopter Hub Manager and I've been working on the Hub for just over 3 years. And so in my job role, I just oversee the Hub and manage the Adopter Hub team.
So the Adopter Hub has been rebranded. Can you tell us a bit more about it, please?
So we've changed our name to CATCH, Children and Trauma Community Hub. The Adopter Hub was set up almost 5 years ago now, and it was set up originally to support adopters to provide out-of-hours information and support. And over time, we've really grown. So we now support special guardians, foster carers, social care practitioners and schools. And so we wanted to choose a name that was more relevant for all our members. And the thing that really is the common factor of all our members is that they are either parenting, looking after or working with children who have at some point experienced trauma in their lifetime. And so we chose the name CATCH because we wanted a feeling of being caught, being held, and a community feel. We want the hub to feel like a safe space, especially for our parents and carers.
Okay, so can you describe what's on the hub and how people can use it, please?
So we're not losing the name, the Adopter Hub altogether. So if, for example, you're an adopter, when you log into the hub, you will still see welcome to the Adopter Hub. And when you log in, you'll see a list of our resources. So we've got a huge range of resources on key issues. So attachment and trauma, brain development, child development, sensory processing, a huge range of issues, and they can be in the form of links to helpful organisations, toolkits, videos, people sharing personal experiences and webinars. We host live webinars, usually around twice a month, and they're usually around an hour. And these are hosted by subject experts. So they could be clinical psychologists or education specialists or adopters themselves, or special guardians or foster carers, and again on a huge range of subjects. We've also got an e-learning section. We've got a few e-learning packages, but our main course was written by Dr. Georgina Hibbert, and it's a 12-module course looking at the impact of trauma on children and different attachment styles and introducing parenting with PACE. And it's a course that can be done as a linear course, or you can choose the modules that are most relevant for you. And our webinars and e-learning, you get a certificate if you either attend or complete a module. So you can use this as evidence of learning, or you can use it as part of your CPD. And we also, for special guardians and adopters, we have a forum so they can chat to peers and ask questions and share tips. For adopters, we also have a web chat function, so that we have a little team of trained peer supporters. So an adopter can basically email in a question or a request for support, and we have experienced adopters who are there and able to offer support and signpost if necessary.
Wow, that sounds fantastic, really comprehensive. Thank you. So how can people access the hub?
So we have partners. So we partner with other adoption and fostering agencies and virtual schools and local authorities, and they will fund access for their users, usually for a year, and they will decide when their members get access to the hub, so whether it's for training or support. Whereas PACT adopters will have access to the hub from stage 1, and it's used as part of their training through the adoption process, and then they have access for as long as they need or want it. So their child could be 15 years old and they will still have access to the hub. It's there as long as they want.
That was really informative. Thank you for joining us, Tanya.
Thank you.
And I'm joined today by senior social worker Molly Bampkin. Welcome, Molly.
Hi, thank you.
So, Molly, can you tell us what the Adopt a Hub is, please?
Yeah, it's an online platform for sort of the adoption and fostering community, and it offers numerous resources in sort of various ways really. So we've got webinars on there. There's articles adopters and foster carers can access. There's e-learning. So there's all sorts of materials which people can go on to access at any point, 24/7. And there's, we have live webinars which are regularly uploaded and sort of done live, but there's also things which you can access. All of those are archived, so you can access those later down the line as well. So it's a really great place to look for support and just advice as well, really. I mean, you can access it at various stages of your adoption journey, which I'm sure we'll come on to. So there might be things which feel more relevant at the beginning of the process or maybe later down the line. And new content's been added all the time, so it feels very relevant. And the content is very much delivered by professionals who are exactly what they're talking about. So it feels really reliable information which is being given. And it's support for the whole community, really. It's not just for adopters, it's for teachers, social workers, and therapeutic practitioners. So it's there's something on there for everybody within the industry, within the field.
So at what stage of the process are potential adopters given access to the hub?
So if you are adopting through PACT, you get given access right at the beginning of the journey. It's in stage 1, which is really helpful because then you can access it during sort of your preparation training, and it complements that really well. Gives you a really good foundation of knowledge of the needs of adopted children very early on. And I'm sure we'll come on to that in a little bit about kind of when you can use it and what might be useful at different stages. If you're a partner agency, it might depend on sort of when your organisation has sort of will allow you to use the package. So it might be at the start of your journey, it might just be for the training, or it might be kind of post-placement. But if you adopt through PACT, then it will be right from the beginning. So
how can the Adopt Hub be used to help adopters in stage 1 of the process?
So I think you can use it in a sort of a variety of ways, really. I think I always suggest to adopters to have a look pre-preparation training at things about kind of attachment, trauma, therapeutic parenting, because I think it complements the preparation training really well. There's a really good e-learning course on there. It's a 12 module e-learning, which is delivered by a clinical psychologist called Georgina, and it's a really, really good kind of foundation. It gives you a good overview of what attachment is, what therapeutic parenting is, and how you can sort of parent with the PACE model. So that is something which I would always recommend to adopters to sort of use kind of in the first stage of the process. There's also webinars on there about things such as fostering for adoption, adopting siblings, and also information about fetal alcohol syndrome disorder. So if people are kind of want to know a bit more about that, or if prospective adopters are considering whether they can, they might be looking down the route of adopting siblings or maybe foster for adoption. It kind of gives you a good understanding of what those processes are. It can sort of help inform their decisions later in the process.
Once the adopter has moved on to stage 2, what kind of resources and help is on there for them?
Again, there's so much stuff, and I think there's a lot of overlap within the stages. But I think if I was in stage 2, I would probably look at understanding a bit more about grief and loss, potentially looking at kind of emotional resilience for adopters. So thinking how you can support yourself going through this process and any kind of techniques which might be helpful. Also things like when you're thinking about matching criteria in adoption, understanding a bit more about parenting children with neurodevelopmental disorders, perhaps managing the effect of childhood abuse on children. Sometimes, that you might be looking for something a little bit more niche, for example, sexual abuse. So there's some information on there about that. And there's also, you can access the learning in terms of the attachment course I mentioned earlier during stage 2 as well. So anything you don't get around to doing in stage 1, you can obviously do that all in stage 2 as well. So yeah, but it's quite useful because you can filter your search. So if you are particularly interested in grief and loss, you can look at that. If you're particularly interested in fetal alcohol syndrome, you can specifically look for information on there, whether that's a webinar or an article or potentially a blog from a parent who might have had some experiences of that. So it's quite helpful to sort of use the search and then sort of refine what you're looking for as well.
And so again, what kind of help and support can people expect to find in the final stage of family finding?
So family finding, one thing I would really recommend is watching interviews of adopters who have sort of been through the process. So there's lots of interviews on there with people who have adopted through PACT, and sort of thinking about the matching process and what it's like to become a family. There's a really good video on there if you're adopting and you've already got existing children in your family, so whether that's adopted children or birth children, and that's quite nice to sort of hear somebody else's journey and what the matching process was like. There's lots of information on there about schools, so whether that's sort of looking at choosing the right primary school or helping children with that transition to primary school. And I think that's really key, particularly if you're looking at children who are about to start school or if they're already in school. There's generally quite a lot of information on there about supporting children with that transition. So whether that's about helping children move on or looking again at sort of the loss they will be experiencing. There's also some information on there about parenting children with additional needs, which can be really useful if that is something which you're considering, and kind of will help you make informed decisions about what you might feel able to manage and what you might not feel able to manage. Again, it's really helpful sort of hearing from people who have done it, and hearing sort of interviews. And lastly, there's quite a lot of really helpful information on there about looking after kind of your mental health during that stage. Also post placement, so thinking about kind of post adoption blues or depression, and sort of how you can manage those sort of things as well. So lots of information lots of things you can access lots of things at that stage, and again you can kind of hone in on what is of interest to you, which you might find useful.
Molly, what kind of help can people find on the Adopter Hub post placement? Post
placement, again, there's so much you could tap into. There's lots of really good practical parenting sort of advice and tips for things like sleep, toilet training, eating, which I think I've had feedback that adopters find really helpful. Just some quick advice about how you might sort of manage some of those daily struggles, which I'm sure every parent has at some point. There's lots of stuff on there about life story work, so how to talk to your adopted child or children about their story and helping them make sense of their identity. And there's lots of good information about how people have done that, and sort of about sort of helpful models about that. There's also information on there about parenting anxious children, and there's quite a lot of relevant things on there at the moment about what's going on currently in the world in terms of kind of things going on with Ukraine. During the pandemic, there was some really helpful articles about parenting children who are anxious about COVID. So that I think a lot of adopters have found that helpful when there's a world issue going on. In terms of teenagers as well, there's a lot of things on there about sort of parenting children who are sort of showing challenging behaviour. And there's lots of things about brain development and how brains develop over time, and obviously how teenagers can experience another developmental stage, which can impact behaviour. And another thing which I know the adopted parents have found helpful in the past is the online safety bits on the Adopter Hub. So thinking about kind of keeping your children safe online, risks of online grooming, and there's also some really helpful information about kind of gangs and county lines. So again, as I mentioned before, that might not be something which feels relevant now as a parent, but it is something which you would like to consider reading about later down the line. They're just a few things, but there's lots more.
So you mentioned well-being there, and obviously well-being and self-care is really important. So can you tell us a little bit more about what type of help people can find on the Hub in terms of that, please?
So one thing which I found really useful as a practitioner reading as well is there's there's blogs which have been written by adoptive parents, and there is a specific one in there about kind of adoption related secondary trauma, depression and anxiety. So that's a really nice, a really helpful starting point, because it's sort of learning from somebody who's been through it as an adoptive parent. There's also webinars on there which look at kind of breath work techniques and things about kind of, well, for children and for adults, so thinking about mindfulness and breathing and how that can kind of ground you, which can be quite helpful in sort of moments of stress. And there's also articles on there. There's one which I saw the other day, written by the Mental Health Foundation, which kind of just offers more kind of, helpful tips and advice about mental health, thinking more about sleep, exercise, things like that. But there's a section which you can click on, and then there's lots of resources on there, whether or not that's kind of in the moment techniques you might find helpful, or whether it's more sort of reading a reflective piece of writing that somebody's written, which might help you, you might relate to in some way as an adopter. And how long can people access the hub for? If you adopt through PACT, you can access it at any time throughout your adoption journey. There's no end date, so even once you've adopted, that your subscription will still be there. Our partner organisations, they usually have access for a year, and then it's kind of up to the organisation if they want to renew their subscription. So it just depends whether you're accessing it through PACT or through a partner organisation. Okay, thank you. That sounds great. You've talked about lots of really good things there. Can we have a look at the hub, please, if you don't mind sharing your screen? So this is the Adopter Hub homepage. And then you can look down here about what might be useful in stage 1. So the things I've mentioned today, for example, various resources here, fostering for adoption, interviews, adopting siblings. And you can see how you can also look at that for stage 2, post-parent and post-placement. So that's one way of sort of getting a really good idea of what's on there. E-learning at the top here. So if we come back at the top, there's e-learning. So this is where you'll find the attachment. Here we go, the attachment course, which I mentioned earlier. So that's really helpful. There's 12 modules there which you can look at. Also putting PACE into practice, and there's one here for education and professionals about attachment. And you can see these are all free, so they're and I think the great thing about these modules is you don't have to do them all at once. So it might be a case of doing them one a day or one a week, whatever feels manageable for you, which is a really good thing. You can come back at any time. And then also at the top here, I mean, I'd recommend having a good look around, but if you go to resources and then we'll click on Adopter, this is where you can filter. So topics here. So if we wanted to look at life story work, we can click on there, and that will bring us to all the things which have a reference to life story work. So there's, as you can see, there's lots of webinars which have already happened, but these are the recordings. We've got a video from Alex, who's an adoptee, about his life story. There's some learning here, and you'll find on the hub as well, there's lots of kind of toolkits. So there might be a PDF document which you can find which will have information in as well, or useful notes. So it's not all videos, there's lots of kind of other bits and bobs as well. But I could go on for hours because there's so much to show you. Yeah, there is. But I think it's worth having a look. That's brilliant. That was really useful and very insightful. So thank you very much, Molly. There's lots more information on our website. You can scan the QR code, and we are pactcharity.org. And like and follow us on social media. And we also have lots more information on our YouTube channel as well. So thanks for joining us today, Molly. Thank you. Thanks for having me.